Welcome to a very special episode of Spoiler Alert, kicking off our John Carpenter month with an in-depth analysis of Escape from New York. I'm Corey Cummings.
I'm Zach Hampton.
And welcome to the show. We're both very excited about this. This is our very first director-focused series of episodes. We both recently watched the film. We've both got our notes and
ready to go.
Ready to dive in. We do want to offer a little note here. It is a dark and stormy night here in
hear the storm.
Murfreesboro. So if we have a little atmospheric noise in the background, we do hope that you forgive us. Yes,
or disregard.
Either one. Viewer's choice, listener's choice, because it's not a viewer.
Well, all right, exciting. I guess we should just
jump right in. Yeah. So I think we discussed kind of we wanted to talk about our individual experiences with Carpenter, how we heard about him, previous favorite films, and that sort of thing. So, Zach, do you want to give the listeners some of that backstory?
Sure. I guess thinking back on it, I imagine that Halloween was probably my first introduction to John Carpenter, just because that's probably his most popular, widely received film.
Right, yeah.
So I imagine I probably saw that, and I took it as just another horror movie. I didn't see anything crazy about it, and that's because it's the proto-slasher film.
Sure.
So the time I saw it, all the unique things that he did with that, he establishing that genre, had already become cliches.
Right.
So, it wasn't anything monumental to me when I saw it for the first time. Now, when I watch it, obviously, I understand it for what it is.
Sure.
It's such a great film. And then from there, I probably saw Escape from L.A.
Right.
That's probably the next one I saw for whatever reason. It was probably on TV. So, I didn't really have a lot of experience with Carpenter at first, and especially kind of getting into movies. He wasn't always on my radar. I never really, always heard his name. I knew him for what he had done with Halloween, and had heard his name referenced, in other things, with other projects, but didn't really kind of delve into him. I didn't really know anything about his aesthetic. I didn't understand that he was like this kind of cultural phenomenon.
Right.
So it was probably later in my 20s that I really came around to Carpenter when I was studying film in college. I think They Live might have been the one that hooked me, where I was like, okay, this guy, there's a lot more going on with John Carpenter's films. He's obviously a cynic. He's obviously got this slanted view of the world, and so that really hooked me. And then from there, kind of just getting into his whole aesthetic of slightly B-movie, but then there's really interesting thematic things going on underneath his films. So yeah, I think post They Live, I think Big Trouble might have been the next one, and that one just blew me away. It's my favorite Carpenter film. I don't know, even though that's a bold statement, The Thing is up there too. But so yeah, I think us kind of bonding over Carpenter over the last couple years.
Right.
I've really just delved into him. He's become one of my favorite directors. He's so iconic, and man, there's just so many good things I could say about him that I'm sure we'll get to them as we move forward. But yeah, just my whole thing with Carpenter is that he's just a master. He knows the movies he wants to make. He's got them in his head, and I love his entire aesthetic and his ideas and themes. And he's just an exciting director, and I love that there's still those directors out there to discover. So
yeah,
and more of his films to discover, because I haven't even seen In the Mouth of Madness, and some of his later work, and then I haven't even seen some of his earlier work as well. So yeah. Well, awesome. What about you, Corey?
Well, similarly, I'm certain the first Carpenter film I ever saw would have been Halloween. I think as a young kid, I would seek out these slasher movies, and similarly, I was sort of unaware that this had invented the genre. Because, like you said, you see this movie and all these things are in it that I recognize, but I didn't realize out of context that this was the first time that anyone had ever seen those. For me, he was just another one of those boogeymen. Michael Myers was in the same vein as Freddy Krueger and Jason, and
Absolutely.
it was sort of just this faceless not nameless, but this terrifying object. So it wasn't until I started taking movies a little more seriously that I was able to examine that film for its
strengths and
its values. Yeah, but I think my first experience thinking about him as sort of a unique filmmaker, funnily enough, when I first got my driver's license, my two places that I drove every day, I went to Sonic and I went to Captain Video in Smyrna, Tennessee. It was a tanning salon / video store, yeah. And they had the dollar DVD rentals. And I basically, the same way that Tarantino likes to say that was his film school, I saw so many movies that summer, and I knew the name John Carpenter from Halloween, mm-hmm. and I saw the DVD John Carpenter's Vampires. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, cool. Obviously, if his name is above the title, it's sort of a selling point. So surely this is cool. This is a director that I should be watching. Went home, watched the movie. It's absolute garbage. It's really, really bad.
I hear it's one of his worst. I haven't seen it.
It's really bad. But at the time, what I would do, I would get a director's film, and then I would want to see all of them, right?
Yep.
So I went back to Captain Video with my list, and the next one, and the only one they had, was The Thing. So I took The Thing home, kind of expecting a similar experience where maybe I'm not going to really enjoy this. But dear Lord, was I wrong. It shook me to my core. I'd never seen effects like that. To my core E. That's where I got my name, actually, yeah. Incredible film. I was struck by not only the effects, but it was just such a paranoia-laden film, and I thought, like, okay, this guy, I gotcha. So then I was trying to do more research and sort of found that he kind of had this string of near-perfect movies in the 80s before he kind of moved away from that in his later career. So started exploring those. Because of that, The Thing has always had a special place in my heart. It's one that I can revisit anytime. You and I really bonded over Big Trouble in Little China, because I think it was one that we had sort of somehow not realized we both really loved, and then being able to see it together was a really great experience.
Got a lot out of that one.
Yeah, so I started, again, when I started studying film, going to even looking at more of his films, and just starting to recognize those things you were talking about, with he's definitely an outsider. His music is obviously a critical component. I was really struck by that. And it just started kind of a love affair that continues to this day.
Definitely.
And I will say, moving into the film that we're talking about this evening, Escape from New York is one that I had only seen once or twice. It wasn't one that I watched as frequently as some of the others that are maybe closer to my heart. So this was a pretty fresh experience for me watching this film. And I think you said something is sort of along those lines, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think I might have lied to you. I told you that I hadn't seen this before, but I had seen this film prior to watching it. I guess I watched it last night, but and when I watched it the first time, for some reason, it was underwhelming to me. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. And maybe it was that whole thing where I just didn't understand what was really going on. Or maybe part of the value, the production value, maybe tainted my viewing of the ideas in the film. Mm-hmm. Not to bring down the production quality, because actually I think it's quite charming and I love it for what it is.
Yeah, for what they accomplished on their budget, for sure.
So, and I think that it's become very iconic now, and works. But coming back to it last night, I just. So much more depth than I actually realized that was there. It was like there's this, obviously the artifice of what he's doing, but then there's so much to kind of dig out and pull up and analyze and pull threads on. So Yeah, it really it stood out to me, my viewing this time. So
yeah,
I'm
I
really
think
excited.
my experience initially was pretty close to that, because I think coming from They Live and Big Trouble in Little China, this is a much smaller movie.
It is.
There isn't
even
as
though
much...
it's kind of got a big scope.
It
actually.
does, but I think in terms of
character,
flash, there aren't as many effects that might strike you or anything like that. It's definitely it's smaller, even though the scope is certainly big.
Almost contradictory, but somehow it works.
So the film opens with a very iconic theme song, which opened our episode this evening, and we have stark titles, very simple.
Black screen, white titles coming on, giving you the credits, and then finally the title "Escape from New York,"
right?
And just white, block text, very simple typeface, not dressed up in any kind of way. Music still playing, very kind of serious, kind of just
very moody.
Pulsing sort of synth, synthesizer sort of tones. Very interesting music.
For sure.
And then we get a little bit of first information on kind of the setup of the film, which is that in the year 1988, the crime rate in the United States rises 400%, which is incredible.
That's a shocking statistic.
I don't know what went wrong in that, which is interesting. So we could maybe ask that question a little later and get into that. Like, what is the state of things?
What went
for that
wrong? Increase?
And we should say that the film was made in 1981,
right?
And so they're from the outset, he's projecting 8 years down the road that there's going to be some cataclysmic society's going to fall apart, and that the government is going to have to enforce this police state upon its citizens, and they create a prison out of Manhattan Island.
Yeah, it's a maximum security prison for the entire country. So criminals from the whole country, this is where they're sent. This is the only prison. They mention the bridges and the waterways are mined.
They have mines, so if you try to cross, you're gonna become,
Right, and they've militarized the police force, so the police force has become a literal army. And to set that up, we see an escape attempt opens the film. And we see, initially, the criminals are paddling through the water on this man-made raft, and the helicopter up above gives them the option to turn back. They say, turn back to the island now. When they don't, they are shot immediately, and they explode. They're completely destroyed.
There's nothing left of them. They're pulverized, and
it sets up that strong arm of the, it's totalitarian. Like,
totally.
Now we know that.
Well, even prior to that, I want to just kind of the very, very opening shot, of you just. The camera is on a wall, and you have, I think, a patrol vehicle come by, but the wall goes completely out of frame, and then you see the camera rise, and you come to realize how large this wall actually is. It's this huge thing. And then, over the top of the wall, you see the cityscape of New York. You see, among other buildings, the two towers, and also the Statue of Liberty, which I thought was just like an incredible just visual symbol or just visual analogy right there, that you've got, this wall surrounding Manhattan, and also Lady Liberty literally kind of giving you this cue that liberty is being held hostage.
Right.
I thought that was just a great visual metaphor, and maybe it's so on the nose, maybe everybody sees that, I don't know, but I thought that was just so clever. I loved that. I couldn't say better things about Carpenter for nailing that one.
Absolutely.
So setting it up very early on that this is a, like you said, totalitarian, near fascist sort of police state. So
we see Tom Atkins playing Remy. Tom Atkins, pretty great character actor. He was in Halloween 3, which was that was produced by Carpenter, but he's also has a very iconic role in Night of the Creeps, Fred Decker's movie after Monster Squad, R-rated
Haven't seen that
horror
one.
film. Very cool, but he's great in that. So you have, and I think it sets up the we have recognizable iconic actors in small roles in this. We see that fairly often. And one other thing I wanted to note that I thought was great, we see Kurt Russell in this is an iconic outfit. Snake Plissken's outfit. And
very much so.
We've also got another instance of some very high boots, which we see again with Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. So I don't know if that's...
Old Jack Burton.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a demand that Kurt Russell makes, certain boot height.
Or maybe that's just his... When he embodies those characters, that's maybe how he envisions them. Well, and also... These are pretty much like substitute Western sort of archetypes. So we're playing off those kind of archetypes,
right. And
from the onset.
Right.
So
on that note, we have Lee Van Cleef playing Hauk, who is famous for being in For a Few Dollars More, and even more notable, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. One of the most iconic faces in
the ugly, right? Or the bad.
He was the bad, because he was a bounty hunter in that film. So, what I kind of see here that Carpenter is trying to set up is we have a notable badass of the past, and he's treating this new guy, Snake, with a lot of respect and sort of recognizing that in him. We have this new badass, and I think Carpenter
That's an interesting, astute observation.
Using Van Cleef is passing the torch.
Cultural
passing of the torch to Kurt Russell.
Interesting.
To embody this new badass role.
I like that a lot.
And so that we can not only within the film believe that Snake Plissken is a badass, we can believe that Kurt Russell could embody this character if Lee Van Cleef's character is, recognizing that.
I love that because it utilizes culture and cultural figures as vernacular, as language. We know we already have prior experience with these actors, and they have this sort of capital, right? This cultural capital.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it's like he's kind of giving Russell at this point, like, here you go, I'm paying you my respects, and that's really interesting. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I'm not quite sure, and maybe you can clear this up for me because I don't know how it makes sense, and I don't know why the decision was made.
Okay.
So, we see Snake introduced before the plane goes down, before the whole premise is set up. So,
that whole...
it doesn't make a lot of sense because then then Hawk is like, oh, but we need this guy to go in, but it's like he just conveniently arrives when they need. It's a very weird kind of setup.
I think that's what it is, and I felt like that didn't really work because it was more.
I think that was a misstep.
It felt like Hawk was just like, oh, thank God, what a coincidence, Snake Plissken's here.
Or he should have just said
guy.
That. If that line was in there, then maybe that would make more sense.
Because it was just like, I think I may have a guy. And it was just like, he just so happened to...
Oh, does he say that line?
I don't know. I may have just made that up. But I don't know for sure if he said that. But I know that, like you said, we see Snake is being processed for the robbing of the Federal Reserve. Which
the plane goes down and all this stuff.
So it's happening concurrently. And then Hawk pulls him aside and gives him the option. But he was being arrested before, and I remember that I had completely glossed over that because in my mind, even having seen the film a couple of times when I was younger, I remembered Snake being brought in just for this. Right. So that's why I think even, my mind sort of thinks like, I don't know, I don't like the way that it is in the film, so I'd kind of created this fiction.
Maybe, I see what you're saying.
So... for me...
That's just something I wanted to bring up. I noticed that, and, structurally with the film, I didn't think it made sense with, what was going on.
Yeah,
and I wanted to kind of bring some attention to it.
It does feel a little strange to introduce him first.
But still doesn't knock the film down in any way at all.
It ends up working.
Super strong.
So then we have... we're introduced to a representative from the National Liberation Front of America.
The labor workers of America.
Yeah, fighting against imperialism.
The imperial nation.
Yeah, and representing workers and oppressed peoples of America. And they do explicitly say the racist police state. So we've already seen there's some obvious political parallels to what's going on right now. We've got a wall being prominently featured. Yep. We have the police blatantly being called out for being racist.
And just the government, like a police state,
right.
you know.
So we're seeing a lot of parallels here in obviously not only our current society. I mean, it's obviously this film was Carpenter wrote this film as a reaction to Watergate, and then tried to get it made around that time, and the studios thought it was too dark, and he kind of shelved it. And then later, and I think he even says, and I've forgotten, there was also, he added some things in as a reaction to another sort of political scandal of the time. So it's sort of, it works.
It's latent with these symbols that are very culturally relevant right now. And on that note, I kind of wanted to bring up another cultural symbol in it that is super heavy-handed, but at the time you wouldn't think anything of it, but now it's just like, wow. Like, so, I mean, the two towers are really a large part of, like, it's a set piece, you know, like, the World Trade Centers are in it, and obviously, I'm just thinking, like, watching this now, there's just there's images of the plane crashing into a building. It
creates a level of discomfort just now because of
exactly. I mean, it has almost this like added cultural relevance now because there are these like huge symbols from our recent history that definitely bring up some very not tender, just very like unnerving emotions because we lived through this catastrophic event,
right?
And you know, Snake lands a plane on top of the one of the World Trade Centers. It definitely. I just wanted to bring attention to that.
It definitely adds. It gives those moments a lot more emotional weight. That it certainly wasn't intended, but it's still there.
And just in the context of like what the film is saying as well about America and fascism and like all these things that are very relevant now. Like it's interesting that those, I feel like obviously it's a coincidence, but I just can't believe that those are in there in that way. It just brought a lot to my mind, and I just think that was really important to note as well.
Yeah.
To get us back on track though, sorry.
We get the plane is taken over. The president escapes via his presidential pod. So then
there's numerous like silly things going on. In here, like I wanted to bring up the guy trying to like hit the door. It's just so comical how
very little force.
Like it's funny. It's like I wonder what action Carpenter gave the guy. Like, all right now, hit the door, but
not too hard.
Yeah, you don't want to break it down now. Or, I don't know. It's like it's super silly. It's some of the action in the movie is played like very campy,
right.
And I wonder if that was intentional, like, or how much of it was intentional, or not.
Definitely, that was a funny moment. So then we see, and I think this is there is a lot of ingenuity in this film because of their lower budget. So one of the first things that we see, that we don't see, the actual crashing of the plane. It takes place on a radar screen, and
very, very smart move.
Right,
like,
so we don't
production.
We don't have to see. They don't have to create the effect of the plane crashing.
It's an interesting storytelling device. Like it's almost interesting that we see. Like I like the visual of seeing the plane, hit the building, and then you see the trajectory of the pod go down. Like that, I thought that was a great storytelling element.
Right. So now we have our plot device in place. The president is in trouble, and we need somebody to rescue him. So, like we said before, very conveniently, Snake Plissken is here. We have this wonderful scene between the two of them in Houck's office, so this is our first introduction to Snake Plissken having one hell of a reputation.
Exactly.
Houck knows who he is. They both served in the military together.
Like they've heard of each other. Both of their reputations precede them.
So Houck, in talking to Snake, also sets up another important plot element, which is the disillusionment of a veteran, right? So we have Houck calls him a war hero. He uses it kind of as a derogatory term, and then Houck is trying to motivate him to save the president and says, your country's at war. Exactly.
President.
I don't give a fuck about your war. He
about
says.
your war.
So
Yeah,
this is
great. I love
this is a
that
pretty
line.
clear. It sets up the independence. It also sets up the disillusionment
thematic,
of soldiers, and Houck as well becoming he's the chief of police, but he also there is a definite respect in this scene. Houck clearly respects Snake, and I think that comes from both of them serving together, and you definitely get the sense that he is using Snake based on what he knows about his experience in the war.
Absolutely.
And
it's like, how could you not? The guy had, these outstanding, achievements that he did in war, and I can't, the actual, his actual...
it was flying
something over Leningrad.
A mission over Leningrad, yeah.
That's one of them.
Which actually, interestingly enough, I read
that's probably a
William Gibson
reference to something.
Said that one of his motivations for writing Neuromancer was that line, because he said, as small as it was,
weird.
It sounded so, he was like, it's the best kind of sci-fi where you get a line about something that's never really addressed again, but it was so notable to him that he went on to write Neuromancer.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So Carpenter, creating another cultural icon.
Neuromancer is one of the best cyberpunk.
Just like Halloween invented the slasher genre, that sort of it became the cyberpunk. That whole thing.
That's really fascinating.
It's pretty neat.
There's some interesting lines that I want to point out. I love that Houck is like Pliskin, and he's like, call me Snake.
Right, and we get that again later.
Exactly, but yeah, once we get to it, it's reversed. I love that. I thought that, I just love those little bits of dialogue that's iconic. It's cool. It's quotable. I love that. I love that Snake's name is Snake. Or what is Pliskin's real name? That's got to be not. That can't be his real name. That's
sure. Yeah, that's a little. It's definitely, and I think later we see. He's obviously proud of his name, with his kind of interesting tattoo. I've
seen that tattoo so many times, and not until I watched it last night I was like, oh,
It's like a cultural touchstone, and then you're like, that's where it's from. I love those moments when you finally something that you were aware of, but you didn't really know where it came from.
Pants Snake.
Yeah. So we also get the mention of sort of the world that the criminals have created. So Houck talks about how they have created steam-powered cars, and that they have probably found a source of gasoline.
Because all the electricity is cut off in the city. They've cut the city, which is crazy. It's almost wild that they've it's like they created a prison, but it's also like they said, lock them up and let them do whatever they want at the same time.
It's almost creates a sort of post-apocalyptic environment.
It's almost Australia.
Yeah.
It's like...
For sure. And I think this sets up something that we see a few times later, where the criminals have sort of been forced to try to recreate
a society.
A society that they recognize.
Right.
So one thing is
with
the
Duke.
Continued use of cars. Yeah, we see...
They have a
leader, and calling him a duke, and using that sort of royal imagery, and then we see the scene soon where they're putting on a show in a theater.
I thought that was really interesting. That these people are they're criminals, but they're still interested in culture.
Yeah,
and they're putting on this musical. It's it's not what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that scene. And then we also in that scene are introduced to one of the many great side characters, Cabby,
played by the great Ernest Borgnine.
I was going to ask you how to pronounce that.
Apparently, that was written for him.
For him,
yeah. Written with him in mind.
He completely smashes it. He kills it in that. I mean, he's chewing it up. I love it.
And it's a great,
completely characterized down to
For sure. And it's a great, in this grim movie, it's nice to have that. He's a very jolly, he's a welcome, warm presence. Exactly.
And this, very, when Snake is down on the street, you're almost... you're almost like, is he gonna be safe? Like, he's this badass, but at the same time, I'm like,
it's definitely a dangerous moment. So the last thing I'll say about the scene with Houck and Pliskin is it also gives us the film's MacGuffin. We get the mention of the briefcase and the tape inside
with the nuclear fusion,
right? Which we don't know exactly what it is or what it's for.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's the plot device. It's the thing that we have to get back, and so everything, and then we get
and the time frame that it has to go down in as
24
well,
hours,
which also is like creates the tension of
right.
You got to get this done. Well, then also another plot device.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is the watch. And then the implants in the neck are great devices to build tension and to maintain tension.
Exactly.
Throughout the film, we see constantly looking at the watch.
And then even he has a radio, so he's in contact for a little while, but then in the chase scene, he drops the radio, so it's like, oh no, like they're totally going to think he's going to die.
Right. And one thing I thought that was interesting about the scene with the doctor is, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to call him the Honorable Doctor, because he's the one... Immediately after putting the implants in, he looks at Houck and he says, "Tell him."
Yeah.
And Houck, you can tell, is just like, you asshole.
Why'd you dare?
Yeah, so then we get that there have been 2 small implants inserted into arteries in Snake's neck that in 24 hours, if they are not deactivated, will open up his arteries.
I love that that Houck is like, they're not like big explosions, just little, like the use of his hand to like simulate the... just the size of a pinhead, just enough to open up your arteries. I love this character in this film. I love his delivery. His lines are so quotable.
One interesting bit of trivia about Houck and Lee Van Cleef: he was on set for one night. He filmed everything, all of his parts, in one evening, and he had just suffered a knee injury, and his wife was on set with him to make sure he could get through it. Which is amazing to think that he was in pain, because he radiates authority and he's commanding, and there's this
charm too.
Yeah, and he's still an intimidating presence, even knowing now that he was in pain, and they had to
maybe it brought some grimace to his facial expressions or something.
Carpenter, some of the shots, Van Cleef was out of focus when he went back to edit, and he had to use them anyway because they couldn't afford to pay to get him back, which is incredible.
I didn't notice those scenes at all, so it's not a detriment to the film in any kind of way.
So then they send Snake on his way with some pretty badass weapons and very bulky electronics.
I was gonna bring that up with the president as well. Like when they put him in the pod, they're like, "Here's this life device." Yeah. It's like it's like this insanely huge bracelet. Yeah. It's like not even as big as our phones, or it's bigger than our phones now.
Or that ridiculous phone that Houck uses at
the end of the movie.
It's like this size. It looks like a novelty phone.
It does. It's fantastic. Yeah. I love those dated pieces.
It's great.
It's so charming.
Yeah, especially because this is supposed to be futuristic, sort of. Right. But it's
so dated at the same time.
So then we see when Snake takes flight and is flying over the city, we get great miniatures. Really sells the cityscape. And then a fun little trivia bit about these miniatures for this set was repainted and reused in Blade Runner a few years later, which is so cool.
That's amazing. And I mean, to think like the production design and everything on Blade Runner is like that's its strongest asset. Like,
absolutely.
And that's amazing that they're like reusing old set pieces from this film. That's incredible.
I think that's a testament to how amazing these miniatures were.
And just like the idea that Neuromancer, this what was also William Gibson.
Yeah.
He also was inspired by this. It's like Blade Runner was also influenced, which is another cyberpunk.
Another cultural touchstone.
With Phil K. Dick,
Absolutely.
Wow, this film has really had an influence.
Really influential.
I had no idea.
Another really cool little bit of trivia that I found, some behind the scenes stuff. The shots of the radar that show the city, they did not have the computer graphics in order to make that wireframe model. So what they did, they went and put strips of reflective tape on all of the models and then shined a neon light on it and then filmed it so that all you could see were these bits of tape lighting up, and it creates
amazing.
a perfect. It looks like a
computer generated
CG.
Yeah, like this sort of.
And that's just another some more of that budgetary ingenuity.
I was wondering how they created that too, because I was like, surely they weren't able to do this with the technology at the time. But it's
right.
I mean, you couldn't. To me, it looks like a computer simulation.
Brilliant idea.
Simulation, if I can say that word.
So then we get the great theater show, like we were talking about, with the sort of a representation of them trying to. I like what you were saying, that they still want culture, even though they're
culture
supposed
still
to be.
exists within this sort of
and I think
this broken world.
Yeah, and that sets
world
up
on the
another theme that's like clearly society at large has forgotten about these people and they don't care about them anymore. And then this is a way to show that like they're still human beings and they are in here desperately trying to like recreate society in a way that they can understand.
That's
and
very poignant,
be familiar
actually.
with.
Yeah, what a poignant scene. And something that kind of sparked an idea and a question that I had about the city and about when they set it up. Like, I don't know, like, did the people that were in Manhattan, were they just screwed? Did they have to stay, or did they evacuate Manhattan? Did they say, you have to leave your home, we're turning this? Or is it the idea that, like, New York in the 70s was so grungy and gritty anyways that, like, there's no hope for New Yorkers.
Right.
We're just gonna sell them all in. And if you weren't a criminal then, well, you are now, just because of where you live.
I think that, so there's two explanations, and I think one of them works better for like the theme of the movie. And of course, this isn't something that we know.
Right.
So
it's left open to...
I think that most likely, like, in an ideal world, they would have been evacuated and given a chance to leave and all this, but
that's not the world.
That's not the world that this film takes place in. So I kind of think that they maybe very quickly were like given a this is happening, get the hell out kind of moment.
And if you don't get out, like
also maybe they just closed it off and all the they probably got killed off, like you said. If they weren't criminals, they are now, and I think that kind of fits in a little more with the really grim theme here. Yeah,
just some of the characters, like, I want to know like a little bit more backstory. I'm not saying like that the film needs to do that. I'm just saying like I think that's a testament to the film that like these characters are they're fleshed out in one sense, but in, like, Cabby, like, we don't know...
What did he do?
Yeah, what did he do? Or did he do anything? Because, so here's another thing.
For a long
30
time.
years.
Yeah.
So, that's longer than the time that it's been in prison. So that's what made me think...
maybe he was just a cab driver.
That's what I'm
saying.
saying.
Got stuck.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe he was, and like he's still trying to grapple. Well, I mean, I guess but he seems super at home.
He seems totally fine.
He's like, he knows
where to go and where not to go, because he tells him like, when they get to, he's like, this is a safe part of town. You can relax, and he's like, normally I wouldn't go out, but I wanted to catch the show, and so he's definitely acclimated to this new reality. But,
exactly.
But that's an interesting question.
He's a fascinating character, though. One of my favorites in the film.
For sure. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is after we see the scene, I think this is Carpenter flexing his horror muscle.
When he goes down into the...
when the crazies are coming out of the sewers.
You're jumping ahead quite a bit. Okay.
Is really terrifying. Like
it is. It's like, whoa, they're just coming out of the woodworks.
And it's really like,
it's sad too, because it's like, it's like they ran out of food for the month. Like, all those people actually stay in the sewer system.
Which was set up earlier in the film that the crazies have taken over the sewers and like the subway. So they are subterranean.
Yes.
And honestly, like, do you go in and know you're a crazy? Like, how do you become a crazy? Do you move down there?
Or you're probably more shunned by everybody else.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I guess my place is here with the dregs. One thing, I want to go back to something that happens in the theater really quick, or below the theater, rather. Like some character development with Snake. I mean, there's just like... Was this woman about to get raped? Like, these vile things are going on around him, and he just, like, walks on by, like... And then also there's a funny bit where there's, like... Another, like, really ridiculous action thing where things, like,
who has
the fakest punches.
The wristband. But it also is kind of... the way that is shot is pretty horrifying because what we're seeing is a guy holding another guy's head down and just beating his head.
No, for sure.
Just relentlessly. And then he is... Snake gets that guy to run off, and then we think, okay, this is the president. We've rescued the president. Right. And then we get this man who is singing "Hail to the Chief," and he's
like, I knew I would put it on.
Yeah,
I'd be the president.
Yeah, and so we're seeing now. This also sets up that the people that have the president are they know what they're doing.
They're a little bit more smarter than maybe. Not that they're given credit for, but they're not stupid. Yeah, they knew that they needed to throw them off the trail because they knew they were going to send in people after them. So that sort of sets up the intelligence of the enemy in this scene. So then, and it also gives definite, like, this makes this stressful. Now we're thinking sets up another. It's like another notch in tension. Right. It's like, oh no, now like. They thought it was the president, and
Right. So then, when Snake comes up out of the sewer or the depths of wherever he is,
right?
And this is when we see the scene.
The sewer people start
chase,
coming out. Then he meets he goes in this chock full of nuts.
Chock full of nuts, yeah.
And he meets the character's like girl in chock full of nuts.
Played by Sunday Weld, and she gets she got a special appearance credit.
Well, and I think that was like a really interesting thing for Carpenter to do because it's almost like a fake out. Like you think this is going to be like the side lead lady, and then like quite immediately she's like, and they almost have like this. She's like definitely like into him, and there's this sexual tension, and then she's pulled literally through the floor into the depths of the sewers and for the crazies to do with what they please.
Season Hubley. I'm so sorry. I said Sunday Weld, which is not... That was an amalgamation of two different names. I think there's a Tuesday Weld, and I decided it was Sunday, but it's actually... I'm so sorry. Season Hubley is that, which is basically a cameo. But... Yeah, it's a definite fake out because we think we're getting, like you said, the sidekick character, and then she is quickly dispatched.
I love that. I mean, he's like, hey, I'm gonna establish somebody. Actually, no, I'm not. Like that's a very contemporary thing to do. Like that's happening now more.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're definitely we're seeing more of that now as a sort of a plot device, but I think that was definitely ahead of its time to do that there.
Very cool.
Then this is I had a note in my notes. In all caps, Snake's voice. Okay.
Oh, let's talk about it. We know we want to get there.
But I know, and I found out Kurt Russell based his performance on Clint Eastwood. Yep. And knowing that and looking back, it is
spot on.
100%.
Yep.
In the Eastwood voice.
Yes, it is. It's got that just slow draw.
That gravelly little
Well, do you, punk?
Yeah.
Like he's totally he embodies it. I mean, and I never realized how, like, kind of overt these sort of references to Westerns were in Carpenter's work, but it's absolutely there. You mentioned the boots, and obviously...
Even Lee Van Cleef's appearance.
Lee Van Cleef and Kurt Russell, they were having these conversations, that these were very intentional decisions, and it adds such an interesting layer underneath what we're already getting, this... outsider coming into this, town, and he's the guy that's going to save the day.
Right. Definitely.
Great stuff.
And it also it's an anti-hero because we
absolutely that's one thing that I wrote as well. Snake is an anti-hero, and like, do we have anti-heroes in '81? Like, were we seeing characters like that at all?
I think
it's huge now. Like,
that's the thing. It's like the norm now.
The character archetype.
And I think another notable anti-hero of that era would be Han Solo at first. But he was an anti-hero that very quickly became a normal hero.
Exactly.
It was more of like a scoundrelly kind of thing, but not in the same way that Snake, who indiscriminately kills people.
I mean, if he wasn't in this film, actually, what they should have done for the sequel was have Snake be like the villain in the next one or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because he is like he could go either way almost. Like, I really like
he is. it's 100% self-serving.
Exactly.
I mean, he's not there. He has no. This isn't for anything more than his own benefit and his own survival.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to survive, and then that's what he's trying to do throughout the film. And
right.
yeah, he goes along with the demands, but only because his life is at stake. So
we get Cabby saving the day at the end of the chase. We get
the setup with the tapes. With right. Cabby, and that's a very important
ends up being important device. Later. We hear for the first time about Brain, who is another major character.
I want to talk about Brain and Snake's relationship a little bit later on, or now.
I think we're about to get. I was going to talk about something from that
Let's
scene
do
too.
It.
They drive over, and like I mentioned before, Cabby tells Snake to relax. This is a better part of town. They go in, and this is also the introduction of something that we hear throughout the film. Every time a character meets Snake, they say,
"I know you.
I thought you were dead.
Plenskin. I thought you were dead."
Yeah, so like I said before, he's got a hell of a reputation, and everybody thinks he's dead.
And that's another question that came to mind for me: is like, what situation did they hear that he was dead? Like, who put that out there, or like, why do they think that he's dead? Mm-hmm. Like, was it the thing over Leningrad, or was it the Federal Reserve? And they think nobody could survive that. Like,
right.
And how are they getting news?
Yeah,
inside
where's that
of this?
Information coming from?
Like, yeah, are there people that are maybe able to get out? Like, maybe there is some way to get out and get back in. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you would want to get back in at all. Like, but I don't know. There would be probably more technology and things going on that from the outside if right. that were true. But it just brought to my mind, like, that it's a bigger universe than we're being shown. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of questions. But I like that a lot. I like that we're able to ask these questions, but we're not given the answers.
Right.
It lets us kind of build it up in our head.
I did also read that apparently every character that says the phrase, "I thought you were dead" to Snake ends up dying.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
And he's the one, and he survives.
And he's the one who lives, yeah.
That's so cool.
Then we get this scene between Snake, Brain, and Maggie, who we're meeting for the first time now, played by Adrienne Barbeau, who was married to John Carpenter
at the time.
Yeah.
But now ex-wife.
Right.
But I think pretty good.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing to me about this scene was that it sort of slips into almost film noir dialogue, because we're getting Snake
really
is heavy on the babies when he's talking to Maggie. He's like, "Hey baby,"
hey, baby.
And he says it a lot. It reminds me a lot of Double Indemnity and Fred McMurray, the way he talks in that film, using baby a lot.
Interesting.
And the name,
the film, or the femme fatale, maybe in a way.
And I think that later. I think we even get they play with that even more. Because in this scene, we're also introduced to the fact that she was given to Brain. So
right, she's like a piece of property
a trophy.
In a way.
Yeah, so it's not like in that sets up the idea that they probably don't have an actual a legitimate emotional relationship. Which later on we find out that maybe they do, but we'll get to that. But I think. You also, the thing that sounded a little noirish to me was the "you, me, and Fresno Bob." Which I think,
you, me, Fresno Bob?
For some reason...
Is that when
that name,
Snake and Brain are talking about the job that they were going to do?
The job where he was, where he left Snake.
So here's what I think is really interesting about Brain, and the fact that his character is named Brain.
Also, Harry Dean Stanton.
His great character actor. And so yeah... I love that this character's named Brain. He's obviously smart, and if you think about it, Snake is the muscle.
Right.
So they make a great team for jobs.
Yeah.
Like Brain gets everything set up, and then Snake is the one that goes in and actually implements the plan, which obviously we learn that Brain kind of double crosses him and leaves him. But I love that he's like, we were buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had this relationship, and I love the name of the character and what it insinuates with their relationship, that Brain is the Brain. Like, it's probably a nickname that Snake gave him,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that's why Snake has this.
Because he calls him by his real name, and I didn't make a note of what it was, but
really?
Snake calls Brain by his real name, and he's like, "Don't call me that."
I do remember that. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a shame they didn't meet a guy named Gasoline that could have had him as their getaway driver. But I think it's interesting too, because we're seeing two characters two completely self-serving characters, and the way that just doesn't work as a partnership, because we see a mention of a double cross, and then later we see yet another double cross. Because
it's like everybody's has their own motives.
They're only looking out for
themselves. It's a cynical world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, can you blame them in the world that they live in?
Right. And this is a thing.
It's survival of the fittest.
And this is one of the, this is a big theme for Carpenter. Cynicism runs through all of his films.
I mean, thickly.
Especially, he
lays it on.
Some of the films we'll be covering this month, for sure.
I just want to, even though this is a little bit off topic, want to bring this up, in this, actually, especially for the scene, but I just love the lighting in the film. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of green, like a heavy amount of green, a lot of reds. There's some interesting flares, like some lens flares going on. Just the lighting and the look of the film is it's super dark and you can't see into a lot of the shadows. But then there's these just those really green and red casts over everything. It just has this grungy sort of weird feel. And actually, in this documentary that I watched on John Carpenter called Fear's Just the Beginning, they mention that one of the people they interview mentions that this is a comic book character. Right. This is a comic book world. Snake is a comic book character. This is, and so it almost makes sense that these things are almost more graphic in a way, visually. Right. So I just kind of wanted to bring up the lighting real quick because I just thought it was great. I loved it.
And I read that the cinematographer it had to find this particular special lens that pulls the maximum amount of light out of dark spaces in order to shoot. It was such a
low light situation.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we get the scene. So Brain, we know, can get Snake to the Duke, right? So that's what we're trying to set up here. Right. We're trying to... Brain knows where the president is being held, so that's where, Brain is sort of the connection that Snake needs to the Duke. And this moves us to one of my favorite iconic images of the film, which is the Duke's car. With the chandeliers on the front.
That is a stroke of genius.
It really sells
it's classy,
the decadence.
But also it's decadent, classy, but it's also just gaudy. But in the best way. You would love to have that car in that city.
It's got a disco ball in the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Because disco balls are timeless. Apparently.
And I mean, it's funny that it's going back to culture. I think it's they're criminals, but they have tastes as well.
And the clothing the Duke has chosen for himself is a certain it's got a military vibe a little bit, but it's also very flashy. And
the late great Isaac Hayes
playing
the Duke, such
pitch perfect casting.
This film has so many fantastic character actors, and they are all at the top of their game.
Absolutely,
it's astonishing, and that's one of the strongest points of the film. I think is that we have these performers that just are nailing it throughout the entire thing. I mean, they sell it, it's believable, even though it's almost like a cardboard sort of world that we're seeing in a way, but they really do, you believe it, you believe everything that's going on, and the character actors are fantastic in this movie.
Definitely. And I think that it sells the world a little better having these recognizable faces, but not superstars. It gives it a little more, almost even it kind of adds to the grunginess a little bit. There's these faces that we know, but not that are
on. It's in the sort of side of culture, it's B culture or something. I don't know what you would call it.
Definitely. So we get the scene. They're driving to the train yard where we know the president is being held. They beat the Duke there.
I love that there's that. I love that Brain knows that the Duke is going to take 7th, so we should take this alternate route.
Right. He knows exactly. He's this is going to give us 5 minutes.
And is also, we should note another character moment with Cabby. Immediately when he hears the Duke coming, he's oh, that's the Duke.
He's gone.
The next time it cuts, and he's driving off, and they're all right.
Quickly for Ernest Borgnine.
That's why he's still alive, though, too.
That's true. Which is, like we said before, he's learned how to survive in this place. So then we have the rescue attempt of the president, which goes south fairly quickly.
Very much so. Snake gets shot in the leg
with an arrow.
He kills a guy super, like, gnarly, too.
Yeah.
Does he throw a knife at his...
He throws a knife into his
awesome.
head. Knife in the head. Yeah.
So sick.
So we... in a failed attempt. So then we get our first Snake Duke meeting. And the Duke, of course...
Utters the words.
I thought you were dead.
Yes.
That's what he says. So Snake is then taken into captivity, and we get to see kind of the inner sanctum of the Duke, where he is just torturing the president with his he's shooting the gun around him. Mm-hmm. He's got a wig on the president,
but it's and we are sympathetic to the president, but then again, should we? It's like he's playing with like character dynamic right there.
Sure.
You're like, oh no, like it's so funny that we're trying to save this president the whole time that. Do we want
and that's even heightened later, which in the final moments of the film. So then we get we're treated to a shirtless Snake Plissken on a table, and we get to see that
iconic tattoo,
big beautiful snake just curling its way out of his pants. It's just I never
thought about that until last night.
So over the top. I mean, it really is, but it just works because, like you said, it's a comic book character. I mean, this is like
the eye patch, the pants,
and of
the
course,
hair.
So it makes sense for the character to have such an outlandish tattoo because he's an outlandish character.
Exactly.
So then we're given sort of this inexplicable death match.
Right.
And I think this is sort of a moment with them adopting maybe a bit of Roman society here, where they have
it's a Colosseum, and it's like the gladiators.
But the problem I had with this scene, in the Duke's big speech,
there's some things I had about it too. Sorry.
Yeah, the Duke's big speech. He says he's clearly saying that they're going to mount Snake's head on the front of their car when they drive out of there. Right?
Yeah.
So you know that the Duke wants Snake dead.
Yep.
So what is the point of giving him an opportunity to defend himself? And I guess it must, for me, it's got to be there. Maybe it's some kind of honor in like allowing him to defend himself. Maybe it's based on his reputation. I can see
that. Yeah, that's a good.
Or just the complete disbelief that he would have any chance at all. Anyway,
I think too that Snake is a fighter. They know that, and they don't have a whole lot of other entertainment.
Yeah, that's true.
This is gonna provide a really like this is like the match of the century if you think about it. It's like Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson or something like that. You know, maybe for these people.
Yeah.
So maybe in that respect, maybe that's another reason why because the moment they hear that that Brain takes the president, they completely negate Snake. They just leave him alone. Yep. Everybody literally, and Snake's just like free to do whatever he wants at this point.
Yep.
So it kind of doesn't make sense in terms of the character motivation for the Duke. Some other problems that I had with that scene, or maybe not problems, it's shot in a really strange way. Mm-hmm. The Duke, we never have like a mid shot or like a close up of him giving the speech. You know, we're seeing him from like a far shot with like the ring and the him above the ring the whole time.
Right.
You know, it never comes, and I don't know if that's a detriment or not, but I noticed that there's not that usual vocabulary of you know, okay, established, and then we're going in because he's giving this speech, and then also like with the fight. I think that there's like, I think actually towards the end of the fight we come into the ring a little bit more, but there's not a whole lot in the ring at first where it stays on the outside. Yeah. So it was the decisions made to shot that scene were very interesting. I just wanted to note those as well. Definitely that there's parts of that scene that almost take you out a little bit. So there are some like missteps within this film.
For sure. I think this scene, more than any other for me, felt a little out of place, a little strange, especially because it ends up meaning absolutely nothing. I mean...
Yeah, it's kind of just like a showpiece.
Snake wins, and then he's
kind of like they just didn't know what to do, kind of how to move it forward. Right. So he could have written himself into a corner. And so like, where do I go with this? Okay, we'll just do it. And you know what? It doesn't affect the film in any way, honestly. And I mean, I do love that the big guy, like, I love that, you know, he kills the way he kills him with the bat and the spikes, like, and just like the danger, like, there is tension there. It works on a level, and enough to move you forward through the film.
Sure. Yeah, it's not a complete, like, okay, I'm done with this movie moment or anything like that. So then we're given the rescue of the president via Brain and Maggie. We also, in this scene, get an important element where Romero, the hissing weirdo from the beginning, is wearing Cabby's hat. And we find out...
important detail.
Right, and we find out that he has traded something for it. And earlier in the film, we see Romero pocket the MacGuffin, the tape. So,
which it's also important, too, and that's why I brought up, you know, Cabby having the interest in the cassettes early on, because obviously that plays into what we're talking about right now. If you all put two and two together, you know what we're talking about. But
spoiler alert.
Also, I kind of wanted to... that's like the tapes is this other sort of cultural icon too. They you know, another, like, Cabby loves music. You know, that's his only thing. And so it would make sense for him. It would make sense for the character that finds the tape, you know, to say, like, oh, hey, like, I know Cabby likes these things. Like, I really like Cabby's hat. Maybe I'm gonna go make a trade. Like, cool. Right. And also that insinuates a barter system as well. So there's a lot that's going on with that whole interaction with Brain and what's the character's name? Romero, which which we found out, it's a sort of a reference to George Romero, one of his contemporaries. I think he stabbed in the stomach.
Yeah, he does get murdered, but it's an interesting way to treat. It shows that for these characters, that tape means nothing in the grand scheme of things, other than a means of, like, trading. But, like, for us, it's the most important element in the film. Like,
which
this tape
I thought was funny.
Must be
like,
retrieved.
I think it's weird that they did, like, what else did they think was in the briefcase that was important? You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like that is a point where, like, those characters do seem stupid.
They show their ignorance.
Yeah, because it's like this tape falls out and he looks at it and I'm thinking, like, oh shit, like, now they know that they have this, like, sort of top secret. They can use that to
bartering.
Yeah, they can use that for bartering. But it just seems like they completely missed the boat on it.
Just think it's...
But maybe they're just ignorant.
Any kind of tape.
Yeah, but I thought that was really fascinating that's how that transpires, and it gets that tape into ultimately the right hands.
Yeah. So then Romero is killed with an immediately fatal stomach stab wound, where he sort of...
I would die immediately.
Yeah, well, and it may just be, you know, that he is in the process of dying, but it certainly looks like he is immediately vanquished by this stomach stab.
Stomach stab.
So then we get we're moving into the climax, finale of the film here. Snake is heading back towards the to the glider, and this is when he gets back in touch with Houck at this point, right? No, he activates his... That's during the match.
Because, like, so that's... Well, there are important things that happen in the match, So you see the guy he's wrestling has his time, like the timer on his wrist, and then another character, one of the Duke's guys, has the the
tracker.
The tracker, and
it only lasts for 15 minutes.
And so when they he sees that, and once he kills that guy, he hits the tracker, and they immediately are like, oh hey, it's going off. Snake must be alive, and so that kind of reestablishes the idea that that they're going to be able to.
Brain and Maggie are attempting to steal the glider for their own
they're gonna
personal use, which is the Snake being double crossed again, which I believe he even says, you shouldn't have crossed me again. So Snake has to go with this leg wound, and just can you imagine the agony of climbing all those stairs?
Oh yeah, that too. I didn't even think about that.
With that leg wound, we get to the the top of the World Trade Center, and the first thing we see is the glider is thrown off the roof.
Pushed
and
off
so,
the roof.
Just
Another
like earlier,
notch in the tension.
Yeah, just like earlier when we see the destruction of the radio, now we're thinking how will Snake escape?
I'm doing this a lot, but I'm gonna take it back just because the World Trade Center made me think of a funny moment at the beginning. Hulk is like, that's gonna take you some time to get down to the bottom of the World Trade Center, and then it just cuts and he's like,
him being
and he's I think he's gonna something's gonna happen. He might have some sort of encounter because it does kind of hint at that, like somebody passes in the background, and so I'm like,
but no.
Cut immediately. He's down. I was like, oh, it's not going to take that long, I guess.
Guess it didn't take that long, yeah.
But anyway, getting back to getting to the climax of the film.
So then we have Brain, Maggie, Cabby, and Snake in the cab. This is when Snake discovers that Cabby actually has the tape that is in question. The tape that Hulk told him, don't come back without this tape,
Yes.
So then we get a chase scene. They have to cross one of the mined bridges.
Prez even says, give me that tape, and Snake says, not just yet.
Right.
And
exactly.
he says that.
So. Yeah, I should say that too. The president is also in the vehicle.
The president said the president. Yeah, it's like this is the rescue right here. They're getting there. They're almost there. They gotta
cross this mined bridge, which Brain has a map to.
Right. Sort of memorized. He's kind of like, you gotta go left.
But he's wrong. So
that's
they end up hitting a mine, which interestingly, is this a laser mine?
I know it cuts the car.
It cuts the car perfectly in half.
I love that.
There's no literal. It's just a clean cut.
And
right
it's just amazing that none of them happen to be like
in the slice.
Yeah, in the slice, it's just
because even Cabby is killed, but he's not sliced. He looks as though he's been blown up. So we see Cabby's death in this moment. The rest of this takes place on foot. All the while,
which bridge do we know which bridge this is on? And
not
that it matters.
Know if they said.
I think they do.
I think they did.
It doesn't matter. I was just curious. I know it's not the Brooklyn Bridge, but I want to say it's like.
Is there a Manhattan Bridge? Do they say that? I don't know. Remember.
Well, there's numerous bridges that connect Manhattan to...
Well, I just meant, is there one called the Manhattan Bridge?
Yeah, I don't know. I want to say it's like the East something...
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know they say it, but
It's not important, but I was just...
So then, all the while, the Duke is pursuing in his chandeliered vehicle.
I love that, jump that they do. Yeah. That's so cool.
And then, so, Brain, who claims to know where the mines are, is then blown up by a mine. So now we see Brain's death. And in this moment, we see that...
Does Brain get blown up by the mine? Is that... Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, while he's on foot. Yeah,
that's right.
So this is the moment where we see that Maggie and Brain must have had a legitimate emotional connection because she stays behind. It could be that too. But here's my problem with this scene. Up until this point... We've had no indication that they were desperately in love. So her sacrifice here, where she stands and gets run over,
she just lets herself die. Yeah,
it feels hollow because it's shot in a way where it seems like it's supposed to feel like an important sacrifice.
It's graphic.
It is, and now here
very violent,
an interesting note of trivia. This is the last little bit. So, and I'll just read this verbatim. The additional shot of Adrienne Barbeau's corpse, it was shot in John Carpenter's driveway after principal shooting was completed because a teenaged J.J. Abrams suggested to Carpenter that he saw an early cut of it because his father had worked for the studio that produced the film. He said that Maggie's death was never fully established and that they needed another shot. So we've got Abrams.
That's incredible.
Right? We've got Abrams, William Gibson.
Wow.
We got a Blade Runner connection. We've got...
Wow.
Yeah. So they filmed...
How cool.
So that shot of her, the bloody shot of her on the ground.
I love that shot.
Filmed in Carpenter's driveway at the suggestion of a teenaged J.J. Abrams.
That is amazing.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Well, if, you got some shit to talk on J.J., you better back on up, because he knows his stuff.
Yeah, even as a teenager. Because that's the kind of thing that,
that's so cool.
To be able to pick up on that, that early on is...
I love that I didn't know that.
Pretty amazing thing. So then... So Maggie is then vanquished by the Duke's automobile. The Duke then proceeds to continue the pursuit on foot. We get a shot. They make it to the wall. Mm-hmm. The president
makes it in the harness, and he is pulled up to safety. And
then Snake he has to physically battle the Duke a little bit.
They pause do they want Snake to die at this point? Because
I think so. We see a hand.
We don't know who that is.
Turn it pull the harness back.
Maybe it's the president. Because that's the only person. Is it there, or is Hulk up there already?
No, I don't know who else is up there, but the president is the one that lowers it.
Okay, yeah, that's right. But why do they stop it?
I don't know.
Weird. That's
I don't know if they were trying to get rid of Snake or what. Because they had what they needed.
Or so he thought. Because at this point, the president. Well, no, he should know that Snake still has that tape.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So, another little element of Maggie's sacrifice that I had noted was okay, so if it's not for Brain, who we have established...
For the president?
Why does she care? Or is it for Snake, who she just met? And we, I don't know, I just feel like that scene doesn't really work.
Well, the thing about Maggie is she is not your run-of-the-mill, character archetype in this film. She's grittier. She's not like your, she's not your mom. She's not your aunt. She's very sexualized, and it's this gritty world that she's in as well. I mean,
but she can also hold her own. And
no, absolutely, yeah.
And I think that that's probably what you're.
That's a testament to that.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Where was I going with it? I just wanted to bring that up. I guess that she's like an anti-hero as well. You know what I mean? But her motivations are a little bit cloudy. We don't really understand or know why she makes that decision or any other decisions. Because at that point, you would think, she was this piece of property, sort of this trophy for Brain. She would. Yeah, maybe she would go to the Duke and be like, let's get him. Let's get Snake. She was trying to double-cross him earlier. At what moment did those characters have a change of heart? Was it just because it was necessity, because Snake was there? Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, the plane's gone, and Snake's here, and we're basically against the Duke now, too. So it's all these people that are still against the Duke, but they're not quite with each other, but they have to stick together. Because I think that's what it is.
Survivalist mentality. And maybe
But she could have survived if she'd have just won.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. But it's also maybe the death of Brain. Perhaps that was just the last straw. There was she had just too much violence. She had enough, and she was just ready to.
She was going to stand up to the Duke.
Yeah, it was I guess standing up to this violent world.
The Duke is the one that gave her to Brain too.
That's
so
true.
Maybe it's for her. Maybe we're thinking about this all wrong here.
Yeah, maybe this is her. This is her stand.
She's
standing up for herself as a human.
It's it's almost like the iconic image of the what is that, Tiananmen Square?
Yeah,
the person standing in front of the tank, and moving in front is I'm not. You're gonna have to run me the fuck over. Excuse me. Don't mean to cuss. You need to run me over. To get through me, and that's. Well, the Duke has no qualms.
No problem. He doesn't slow down at all. So then we're treated to a little peek into our president's mental state. He just violently guns down the Duke.
In a shower of
while
gunfire.
Screaming.
It's very...
number one. He's repeating the thing that the Duke made him repeat over and over. Now, clearly... The president has been traumatized by his experience as a prisoner of war. Sure. And I actually read that Donald Pleasance was also a prisoner of war and said he kind of brought some of those experiences into his portrayal.
Very interesting.
But the problem with that is this incredibly violent, clearly traumatized man is
still the president.
He's still the president, and moments later... They shave his face, they clean him up, and he's totally fine. He's moved on. He's not all shaken or anything. He is calm. He's calm and collected enough to make this speech that this committee that he was supposed to be attending, that is where the plane was going to.
Summit.
Right. At
China and Russia.
The beginning.
Soviet Union.
Yeah.
China, which also... China and Soviet Union are obviously still very kind of relevant now in our current political, or not the Soviet Union, so to speak, but Russia.
It's another, sort of prescient moment where it's like these themes are unfortunately super relevant. Yeah. So another theme that we get here pop back up, and this is the ultimate sort of representation of this, is Snake tells the president, a lot of people died in order for you to live and for you to like get this tape and be, for me to accomplish my mission.
Right.
And the president sort of coldly responds, and the nation appreciates their sacrifice.
Right. So it's like a dismissal almost.
Exactly. And then because of that, that's the moment that Snake decides to keep the tape. So we find out that Snake swapped the tapes.
Right. And I think, Snake the whole time was like, obviously he had he wasn't just going to give this valuable thing over immediately,
but I think he was giving the president a chance
Absolutely.
If he had sort of answered and been visibly
he would have
visibly shaken, I think he would have gone about it a different way. But this is a moment where, obviously
his morality shines through then, because Snake, you could say, is a hero in that respect, because he's standing up for what's right, and standing up against a tyrant, clearly.
And this is a representation of like how soldiers returning home from war feel. When they get home, like you get a medal pinned on your chest, but then obviously we know
finding a job.
Exactly, like we know that veterans are. It's a huge part of the unemployment rate is largely
the
veterans.
Veterans Hospital has
suicide.
Very they're not kept up. There's been huge. In the past 4 or 5 years, the Veterans Hospital has been a huge government issue. There's been all these scandals of people just kind of not taking care of these people, or not scheduling them the correct appointments or whatever. They're just completely just dismissed in our society as they're broken, but
undiagnosed PTSD leading
to a lot of our
suicide, homeless veterans,
and then the way we treat our homeless as well.
Right. So this is definitely a moment that's a very thinly veiled comment on that. And so
something I didn't sorry to interrupt you, something I didn't kind of notice, and maybe this is looking a bit too much into this, obviously the president is white, but the Duke is African American, so there's this
running
African American
in
charge, which is very progressive for probably that time. I hadn't even thought of that, but also maybe that's a little bit, I don't know, he's the president of the criminals.
President of a prison.
So
or
maybe
not even a prison, but of a society of criminals.
Yeah, so maybe that's not this kind of symbol that I thought it was, but anyways, I thought that was notable.
Yeah, especially since we hear earlier in the film that
a racist nation. That's actually why I thought of that, so.
So we then see the tape is played at the summit, and it is some
it's the original tape that we hear Brain play, isn't it?
It's the Cabby,
Oh, excuse me,
but
Cabby,
it's kind of some swingy jazz music, and then we see Snake walking away, tearing up the actual tape.
Such a I love that moment.
Yeah.
I just love it because it's it's sticking it to the
super
man
empowering.
super hard.
Yeah,
it's exactly what Carpenter wants to get across with his film.
And then we see and then we kind of have this chummy moment where Houck is offers him a job, and you're kind of thinking maybe they'll be cool tough dudes together, and he even as a sign of affection calls him Snake he had requested early on.
Call me Pliskin.
Exactly.
I love that.
Snake
is that Snake giving his respect to him? Is he no, you're good.
I read it more. My book. No, for me it's
just you're never gonna be.
Exactly. It was no matter what you do, I'm not gonna work with you, and I'm not even gonna because he got him to do what he wanted, and he's just no, sorry.
I do like that throwback to the line of because Snake tells Huck
Hawk.
Which
is a weird, because it sounds, at first,
Hawk?
It's like Hawk, but it's Hauk.
I do like that it's Hawk. It's a very specific, I don't know. But, I mean, when Hawk has those little devices implanted in Snake's neck, he says, you know, after he chokes him and everything calms down, he still tells Hawk, when I get back, I'm going to kill you. That's true. Hawk asks him, he's like, you going to kill me?
Yeah.
And he's like...
I'm too tired.
That's great.
Yeah. So, and then the film ends. That's the end of our film. And we get some more... I'm fairly certain it's the opening theme, again, repeated over the end credits. So the last little bit of trivia that I wanted to talk about is when the film was released, Mike McQuay wrote a tie-in book. It was a novelization, really cool. But it also greatly expanded on the world, and it included some scenes that were cut from the film.
Oh,
so
cool.
I've got a little bit of info here. It included the robbery of the Federal Reserve Depository.
Oh, awesome.
It also provides motivation and backstory to Snake and Hawk, both disillusioned war veterans, deepening their relationship that was only hinted at in the film.
That's really cool.
The novel explains how Snake lost his eye during the battle for Leningrad in World War III.
We never even really talked about that.
Right, and World War III, which isn't even mentioned in the thing, but is clearly a big thing in the background.
Maybe that's why the crime rate rose so quickly.
Yeah, I think so. So you have, it explains how Hawk became warden of the prison, and then Hawk's quest to find his son, who lives in the prison. And the novel fleshes out the world that they exist, at times presenting a future even bleaker than the one in the film, because the book explains that the West Coast is a no man's land, and the country's population is gradually being driven crazy by nerve gas as a result of World War III. So, like, the World War III background is way more important in this tie-in novel.
Yeah.
And then another unfortunate thing that I found out is this book is really hard to find, and it's like $40 on eBay, because I was going to buy it because I thought this is so interesting and I want to hear more about this. But it's kind of unattainable.
Is it? Well,
not unattainable.
Well, I mean, $40 is, how good a quality? Is that like a pretty tattered...
It's probably a fairly tattered copy, and it's only like a 200-page book. So, it's like a mass market paperback for $40.
And you would maybe want to be like a kind of... Well, you're a collector. I don't know.
I'd love to have it.
But also, it's like not...
It's just novelty. A little... Yeah, it's more of like... I could probably figure out all the stuff I wanted to know from it via the internet. In fact, that may be everything.
Yeah, that's probably what you needed right there. Well, yeah, like a powerful film.
For sure.
A lot going on. And, actually, I really think Carpenter, we've said this a couple times, was ahead of his game in a lot of ways.
For sure.
Even the whole idea of an action movie, but with like way more substance, like what the Wachowski siblings were trying to do with The Matrix. Well, they completely achieved with the original Matrix.
Yeah.
These, having these like full-on sort of action thing. Well, it's not full-on, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like an action film with really intelligent themes and a lot more depth
playing with
than
the genre.
Exactly, and then just this sort of picture show that you're gonna just hoot and holler at or something. I don't know.
For sure. So I think one thing that maybe we should discuss to close out this episode is sort of some of the themes that, or even just Carpenter trademarks that we are seeing in this early film that we, as already fans of the films that we're going to cover, that we know are going to show up again. And we already talked a bit about the cynicism and the cynical nature of the film.
Absolutely.
The iconic music. That is a major trademark created by Carpenter himself, which I don't know if we said that, but most people know that. But yeah, I mean,
And his working with actors like Kurt Russell, time and time again, a staple of his acting. So the pull
3 out of 4 of these movies.
And then his ex-wife also, who is in The Fog as well. So definitely these he likes to use sort of the same players. Probably, and a lot of directors once they find their that they jive and that they have a chemistry with
Why not? Yeah.
They really kind of hold on to each other. Obviously, Johnny Depp and Tim Burton,
right.
and
kind of Scorsese and DiCaprio, and then previous to that, Scorsese and De Niro. You know, like you kind of find your muse a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I think another thing that we see in this film that we'll definitely see later is some of that budgetary ingenuity, where working with a smaller budget, but making it seem like a much more expensive film.
Absolutely.
Making the best out of every shot and every set.
And this is a testament to Carpenter. I mean, it goes back to his film school where he attempted... Actually, I mean, he made a science fiction movie, a science fiction feature, while he was still in film school, which is, at the time, in the early 70s... had to have been incredible to try to accomplish. Obviously, George Lucas was doing the same thing around the same time, but
right.
I mean, it just shows, like you said, his ingenuity to be able to bring these sort of large-scale sort of ideas and settings on a really shoestring budget. I mean, Carpenter is a filmmaker that knows how to make a movie. He knows the tricks of the trade, and I think he knows the psychology behind, a movie. He knows, how a cut is going to affect, how we view a character or how we view a particular scene. He's just very adept to those things. And, I mean, obviously his father was a musician, and so that influenced him in a huge way. He said he always played music when he was a kid. Music was always in his life, so it's like a second language to him in a way. So just is almost natural for him to kind of just go ahead and create his scores. And another interesting bit from that documentary, Fear's Just the Beginning, is they say that Carpenter, the score is like him taking a break from the film. He can kind of go away. He doesn't have to worry about the other departments in that time. He's not making a lot of decisions. He's focusing on his music, and it's like he gets to kind of take a little break, and he gets to just focus on the musical themes, which I thought was really interesting as well.
And I think, that's such an integral part of the film language is the music. With
especially
a movie,
Carpenter.
and with a movie like Star Wars, where a lot of the emotion is coming from John Williams' score, it's the same kind of understanding of the material and knowing how to pair it with music.
Right. They say that filmmaking is 40% visual, 60% sound. Sound design and music. If you don't have those two things, you don't have a movie.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, actually, I can take a step back. You can subtract the music. There are great films out there that just completely without a soundtrack. No Country for Old Men comes to mind. But sound design is integral. I mean, you can do a silent film and it works. It's gonna have to be a silent film, and it's gonna have to sort of acknowledge that in the film, I think. But sound design is so important, and it's just done fantastically here.
And that's a unique thing. I mean, for some reason, and I may be just not thinking, I can't think of another director who composes his own music for his films, and that could be an oversight in my mind, but that's you hear a lot about
Nick Cave, maybe.
Well, he hasn't directed any films.
Oh, okay.
He's written some films, but you hear about writer-directors, producer-directors,
sure,
but a lot of
it's
composer, writer-director. It's just like having your hands in almost every aspect of the production.
If you think about it, the music is creating the tone of the film, and he obviously really wants to control that aspect. He wants to control the tonal qualities of his movies. Do I think he's a control freak? No. Going back to that documentary, when he works with composers, when he doesn't compose, or when he works with other departments, he tells them, you're going to make something, and it's not going to be what I want, but it's going to be, I know you're going to give me the best, and I'm gonna use it, and it's gonna work for what because he knows that he can't, that somebody else is gonna have different ideas, and so he does allow for that collaboration to come in as well. So I thought that was really interesting. Although there have been stories of him saying like when people get really kind of like hell bent on a certain decision that they want to make, and John disagrees with it. Mm-hmm. He'll go in his trailer and he says, "Well, I'll be in my trailer when you guys want to make my movie." And he'll and there's everybody slowly realizes like, "Oh, well, now we have this is his vision. This is like And so and that's another distinction that we should make with Carpenter is that he's outside of the Hollywood industry and always has been.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we mentioned that he's been able to make these independent movies on these sort of lower budgets, but he really, and it makes sense because he's such a cynic and hates the system and everything. But he's thrived outside of the Hollywood studio system. Right. He's always been able to make his movies the way he wants to make them, and they are so distinct. There's and can you even imagine what a studio would do to a Carpenter film? I guess we kind of almost get it with Escape from L.A. I don't know how much the studios,
because that I think that feels like a Snake Plissken movie made by somebody else.
Exactly,
because it doesn't.
It's Hollywoodized.
You're removing
he surfs and then jumps on a car.
That's what happens in the '90s and all of his subsequent films. You start to lose that really trademark Carpenter, touch, that aesthetic. And his last movie called The Ward, it was critically panned, and it's been
who cares about the critics? Well, I'm just kidding.
But it's been 7 years, and now he's touring as a musician. He put out 2 albums.
I actually have a buddy that went to New York and saw him play, and I saw some Instagram video.
It's great. Those records,
so cool. And he's out there. He's playing it, and he's 70 years old, but he's in a trench coat. He's there's fog. It's total atmosphere.
It's called Lost Themes 1 and 2 are out, and they're great. And that's what they sound like. That's what he said. He's creating. He's basically just creating themes for the movies in his mind.
It's really, really
awesome. It's great because it feels like he's kind of getting back in touch with that creative identity that he started to lose with some of these not as well received films.
Yeah, films.
So it's great. He has given us several masterpieces, so I am totally fine with him flexing his creative muscle in any way that he wants to. So I fully support. The records are great. I would love to see him live at some point. I think that's a really cool thing that he's able to do that.
Yeah. Some other points I wanted to bring up before we kind of sign off here. Get into a little bit of his background. He is from Carthage, New York originally. Grew up there till I think 8 or 9, maybe even 10. I'm not sure. And then his parents moved him to Bowling Green, Kentucky. His father accepted a position there to teach music. But he said he just felt like such an outsider in the Jim Crow South. It was a very strange time. He didn't know these people. He didn't know what their beliefs were. Right. He was just a completely different person coming from this completely different world. And so that obviously is reflected in a number of his films, and obviously with the tie-ins with the westerns and The Stranger Coming Through Town.
Right.
Really interesting to kind of know that bit of information. He said it was a huge influence on his filmmaking. I just cannot believe how much fun this was.
I think that this was the one that I was kind of least excited about, not because I didn't really want to watch it, but like we discussed before, I kind of had not the best memories of the film. So there was so much more here to digest.
Yeah, such a strong Carpenter film, and obviously has just a number of his touchstones. For sure. That he's just so well known for, and I think this was a really good kickoff to Carpenter month.
Yeah, perfect kickoff. Great first episode.
We hope you guys enjoyed it and got as much out of it as we did. I know, man, we had a great time with this.
So follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page. Also check out we got a bonus episode this week.
We're doing,
we do our weekly roundup and trailer talk. We had some notable...
We didn't want to leave that on the wayside. We didn't want that to get in the way of Carpenter, so yeah.
We didn't want to spend a month ignoring the news.
Listen to the companion piece, and you'll get our sort of regular ramblings about...
yes, our less focused ramblings, although I don't know what this sounds like yet, so this could be... So, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Don't forget that next week we will be discussing Carpenter's The Thing.
That's correct.
So, if
Bring
you're
your
listening...
parka.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to get cold. It's going to get weird.
It's going to get gross. It's going to get bloody.
Be sure to watch those and follow along and listen with us because, man, this was really, I think this was a huge success.
Absolutely, and we want to hear what you guys think. We also want to hear your thoughts.
Feedback.
So we've got the schedule is posted on the Facebook. We'd love for you to watch along with us, and we want to hear what you think. So we can't wait. We're heading up to the Arctic next week. So we hope you bring the coat, and we'll see you then.
All right, thank you.